Is the sound coming through the TV?
It is. Look, we even got comments already.
Hi, Amita. Hi, Karen. I hope you're cozy on your couch.
That's one thing I'm hearing now.
Can you guys hear us okay before we start rocking? That's a good point, Tony. Thank you.
I'd like a little louder.
Thumbs up.
Yeah, get that.
And we will turn the volume up for everybody, and we'll go big screen. So this is the first time we're doing this. We're excited.
Me too.
All right. Well, I'm going to just go ahead and dive in as people are joining us. I just want to say to you, Annie, thank you, because the local quilt shop contest is amazing. And I've got a question kind of how that originated in a little bit, but doing the Creative Hub Award contest has meant so much to us. It just allowed us to hear from our friends, our customers, and they were obviously genuine and candid. And even though they tell us, sweet things all the time, it was so nice to just read that. And it just made us feel so special. So thank you for putting that together. I really do appreciate it.
You are welcome. And we really appreciate all that you guys do as local quilt shops. And I totally agree. That Creative Hub contest was extra special because it didn't matter if you were a small store or a big store. It was how you interact with your customers. And that's what we were recognizing. And it was really hard picking winners. In fact, I don't know if you remember, but we had originally said there would be 3 winners. And after I read them, it's like, I can't do just 3. So we ended up doing 4 of them this time. And everyone was very different, but all had super dedicated customers who really appreciate everything that you do. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We depend on you.
It was amazing. So thank you again for that. It was awesome. So that was the first thing. I just wanted, this opportunity is given to us by you because of that. So thank you, you guys. Thank you sincerely. And those at home that are watching, you allowed this to happen. So we appreciate, I'm calling this a reward because I guess that's what it is. And we're just thrilled. So I'm excited.
Awesome.
Before we jump in, Tony, is there a way for us to make sure that you can see comments if they come in? I just want to make sure we're not ignoring anybody at home. And you might have to do that. So those of you that are with us live, just bear with us as we want to make sure we're not missing anybody. So, hi, Barbara, Janet. Okay, fantastic. So, yeah, it's fine. So, Annie, I want to do this the right way. I butcher it when I introduce people. Now, I know everybody knows who you are. That's why they're here. They're definitely not here to see me. But if you
I doubt that. I think you're part of the fun too.
well, maybe. I
I
don't
can
take
tell just
compliments.
by looking at that coat that you're a lot of fun.
By the way, look what bag she has to her right. I wore the right hat. I told you guys. To your right. Oh yeah, it's flipped.
Oh.
See, I've got the
Oh,
wolf.
I see that. I did not realize that's what you had on the top of your head. How cool. Did you make that?
I did.
He did.
It was fun.
I love that. Have you shown a picture of that to Tula?
Not yet. No.
And you need to. She
I
would.
have.
She
Yeah,
would be.
they know me too well. But if you would please do us a favor and just introduce yourself and kind of. My first question was essentially, how did you get started? How did Annie become involved in the industry, and then segue somewhat into how byAnnie got started?
All right. Well, I'll try to not make it too terribly long, but basically I grew up in a family of 5 girls. My dad was a Lutheran minister. My mom had taught school, but once she started having us, she had 5 kids in the space of about 6 years. She was a full-time mom. But my dad, when I got my first job out of high school, I was making more money than my dad was making because ministers made nothing. So we grew up with lots of hand-me-downs from cousins and friends. And if we ever wanted a new dress, we had to make it. I don't think I had a store-bought garment until I got my first job in high school. And I bought myself a dress, and boy, that was... My sisters kept stealing it to wear, but none of us ever had new stuff. But my mom taught us all to sew, and she was a child of the Depression. She grew up with never enough money, and so her favorite saying, I think, was, "I can squeeze blood out of a turnip." And so when we would make a dress, we always totally disregarded whatever the yardage instructions on the pattern cover were, because we knew we could rearrange and squeeze things in. And because we were all really short, we could usually take about this much. And of course, that was in the days when you wore skirts that barely covered your rear end. So we made it even shorter. But so I learned to sew from my mom. I was the second. I have a sister who's just barely a year older than me, and then 3 younger. And I am really the only one who has continued sewing. My older sister did a lot of sewing for a number of years, sewing garments and stuff, but she really never got into quilting, and my 3 younger sisters could care less about it. But they'd be all outside playing, and I'd be sitting in my room cross-stitching or, making doll clothes or doing stuff like that. I just always loved sewing. So I got married. I married my high school sweetheart. We moved to Alaska, and we spent 20 years there. We homesteaded 160 acres. We had to build a bridge, 2 bridges and a road to get into the property. We built our own house, and that was where I learned to quilt. It was a very small community. There were only 100 people that lived there, but we were all kind of in the same age range, 20s to 40s kind of, and quilting was just taking off, and we'd get together every week and let the kids play, and we'd sit and work on our quilts. And so I learned to quilt there, but didn't have a whole ton of time for it, so I didn't do a lot with it. When we got our homestead, the rules were that you had to clear and put into production half of it within 5 years, which meant that we had to clear 80 acres, and we got started the first year we were there clearing land, and realized really quickly that this was going to be a whole lot more expensive than what we thought. And long story short, it was part of an agricultural lottery. They ended up changing the rules so we didn't have to clear so much. And we ended up building a country inn in order to be able to afford living there, because we realized that we weren't going to be able to make a living farming in Southeast Alaska. And so we built a country inn. We were the gateway to Glacier Bay National Park. So we had people from all over the world who would come and stay with us. And we bought boats, and we did fishing charters and whale watching charters, and just had a wonderful time doing that. But Alaska in the wintertime is not terribly fun. We would get light at 10 o'clock in the morning, and by 2 in the afternoon it would be dark again. And we were in the southeast part of the state, so we didn't have a ton of really cold weather, but some years we'd get 4 feet of snow. But usually what we had was dark gray skies with rain, and the ground would be frozen, and so you'd have water everywhere. It was very conducive to quilting, but it was not conducive to raising a family and living an enjoyable life. We were so busy in the summertime with our inn that we never got to enjoy the little bit of nice weather that was there. So we decided that we needed to find a place where we could go and enjoy sunshine and go hiking and biking and stuff. So we took a 2-month vacation and traveled all over the place, from Alaska to California to Colorado to Hawaii to Washington and Idaho and Oregon. And of everything that we saw, St. George, Utah stood out over the rest. So we started spending winters here. We were snowbirds for several years. And then we finally sold our inn and moved here full time. And that's when my kids were growing up. The kids got to the stage where they were in high school and stuff. And I kind of, after we sold our inn and I'd spent so much of my life, with so much to do, and all of a sudden I didn't have anything to do, I decided to join the local quilt guild. And that totally changed my life. It gave me a whole new group of friends. And I set my calendar by Quilt Guild activities, and I just absolutely loved learning. We had workshops every month. We have a very active guild here. I think I held every office in the guild there was to hold, sometimes 3 or 4 at a time, because there weren't enough people who wanted to do things. I absolutely loved that. And I grew up. I went to college and studied accounting. I got my CPA certificate. I worked for a number of years for certified public accountants and did taxes and stuff. But I didn't really want to go get a job. but I wanted to have some money of my own. I did all the books because I was an accountant. So my husband really had no clue of how much money I was spending. I had a little sewing room in the downstairs part of the house, and it had shelves kind of like these across the back wall. And I had one section that was pretty much fabric from floor to ceiling, and more fabric on the sides and more fabric in the closet that he couldn't see. But he stood at the door and he kind of looked at stuff, and he said, "I'll bet you have $100 worth of fabric in this." Yeah, probably. And so at that point, it's like, oh my gosh, if he knew how much money I was spending on fabric, I'd be in real big trouble. And he would never have known because I did all the books, and he wouldn't have cared either. But I felt like I wanted a way to pay for it myself. So at the time, scrapbooking was a big thing. So I became a creative memories consultant, and I was doing scrapbook workshops at my house. And, people were coming, and I was selling a little bit of stuff. Multi-level marketing is not a way to make a living. And I learned real quick that wasn't going to be the way. But it was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed doing scrapbooking. But I had made a organizer to go on the door of one of my rooms so that I could put all the stickers and stamps and pens and paper and all those things in it when I had workshops, and people could go, find what they wanted and work on their pages. Well, one of my customers was sister to the publisher of Memory Makers magazine, and she worked with him, and that was one of the big scrapbooking magazines at the time. And so she came to one of the workshops one day, and she said, "We're getting ready to do an issue on spring cleaning, and I think people would really enjoy seeing your organizer. Would you care if I took a picture of it?" And I said, "No, not at all." I said, "Go ahead." And I said, "But why don't you also put in that I have a pattern for it?" Which I didn't, but I knew I could. And she said, "Okay, how much is it?" And I said, $10, because that's what patterns were going for. And she said, "Okay, well, if you've ever submitted something to a magazine, you know that it takes a while before it comes out. So it's usually several months before the magazine comes out." Not long after she'd come and taken that picture, my youngest sister learned that her husband had cancer, and it was a very aggressive form of cancer, and he died within just a few months. And she had 2 little girls, and so I was spending a lot of time in Colorado with her, helping her get things in order and helping her get things settled. And one day my husband called, and he said, "I do not know what you have done, but you are getting all these $10 checks in the mail." And I was headed home, so I headed home in a week or so. Email existed at that time, so I was able to email everybody and say, "This is what happened. The pattern should be ready." And within a couple weeks, I had that pattern ready to go and mailed to everybody. And it was so awesome to get a $10 check in the mail here and there and be able to go add a yard of fabric to my stash. And I didn't feel like I was taking money out of the family budget. So that's kind of where byAnnie got started. And then one of the other members of the Quilt Guild was Heather Purcell, who with her husband Bob started Superior Threads. And they lived just 5 or 10 minutes from where I did. And so one year I offered to be in charge of our guild retreat, and Heather offered to help me. And we became fast friends. They were just starting Superior, and having been a small business owner myself, I was so interested in everything that they were doing. And so I think it was nice for her too, because she had somebody who understood what it's like starting a business, and she could talk to somebody about that. And I was pretty good at keeping my mouth shut. And the other thing, I totally forgot about this until just not now, but one thing Heather said she always appreciated about me is that I never got my panties in a twist. So no matter what happened, we could be perfectly honest with each other. And it's like, yeah, okay, I understand that, and that's the way it'll be. Well, I was at that time starting to work on quilts, and I decided I wanted to do some quilt patterns too. And so I had been in one of the scrapbooking stores, and they had this really cute display up on one of the walls that was flower pots with daisies in them, and each daisy was missing one more petal, and then it said loves me not. And I thought that would make an awesome quilt pattern. And so I designed the pattern with all the flower pots with the full daisy, and then each one had one less, and then I embroidered loves me not all around the sides. And when I got ready to do the applique on it, Heather said, we have this new product that's a fusible thread. And she said, you should try that for your applique and see how it works. Well, what it is it looks kind of like dental floss. It's made out of many, many filaments of nylon thread. And you'd wind it on your bobbin, and you'd put something really smooth in the top. So I usually used bottom line or so fine, a polyester thread. And then you'd trace your design onto your fabric. You'd stitch around that design, and then you'd cut it out right next to the stitching. So just as close to the stitching as you could get. And then you'd put it on your background, and you'd set your iron on it for about 10 seconds or so, wiggle it a little bit. And when you wiggled it, the bottom thread would melt, which would fuse your leaf or petal, whatever you were doing in place. Your top thread would come out. And so you'd have your design fused there, but you didn't have any stiffness or flatness that you got if you were using Wander Under or something like that. All you had was it fused around the outside edge. And then when you went to do a decorative stitch, like a blanket stitch or something to finish the edges, it wouldn't shift and move on you. You wouldn't get to the end and have a pucker because one layer moved faster than the other. So I thought that was super awesome. And I included instructions for doing that in the pattern. Well, she came to me a few months later and she said, we're getting ready to go to market in Houston. And they're doing this special thing called Be Charmed. And if people come watch a demo, they'll get a little charm. And, you know, if they get all of them, they can, I don't remember all the details of it. But she said, I'm thinking that I'm going to demonstrate the fusible thread. And I said, that is a fabulous idea because people will absolutely love that. It's like magic when it happens. And then I said, but you know, you really need to take me with you because I'm the one who knows how to do it. And she gave me this really funny look, and I thought, oh my gosh, I have totally overstepped my bounds here. And she was leaving anyway, and she laughed, and I thought, oh well. Well, the next day she called me, and she said, you know what? I've been thinking about what you said, and you're right. I do need to take you with me. And she said, I'd like you to go for both market and festival. And she said, and I'm going to pay your way and pay your hotel, and I'm going to pay you this daily rate. And I said, oh, you don't need to pay me.
Oh, no.
Oh,
We'll get her back.
froze.
See, how's
not
our Wi-Fi? We're not frozen,
It's
so
her end, her end.
it might be on Annie's end.
And that's right.
Well, now we can see some of the comments, though. By the way, hello, everybody.
Hello.
Glad to be able to join remotely. Yeah, we're glad you joined as well. Hey, Lynn, Janet, Michelle.
It says just Annie, so it doesn't see us.
Just Annie is frozen, I think.
Well,
is what
actually,
she said.
are you saying just Annie's frozen, or are we live here?
Yeah.
You're waving.
You're moving.
Yeah.
Well, I know we can see. I
that's
want to
the
make
only
sure
one.
that everybody at home.
Yeah, it might not be going out.
Let's just make sure. Oh, that's smart.
But they can either.
Oh, we
just
lost
drop
her.
the-
She'll come back.
She'll be back.
Just Annie's frozen. Okay.
Interesting story. I was just gonna say,
I
I didn't get to
That's
see
a great
that.
story.
Fascinating.
My phone has started doing this thing lately where it just mutes in the middle of the conversation.
It's cookie
I'll be
break
talking
time.
barely
Oh,
when
yeah.
the messengers saying, Tina, Tina.
So just hang out. You can see and hear all of us. Fantastic. We're just relaxing, waiting for Annie to come back in.
Eating cookies.
We're eating cookies.
Cookie break.
Hopefully you're eating cookies at home because I'll feel bad if not.
The cookies. I
Mhm.
could cook the bake, but I haven't been here.
There we go. I can see and hear you all just saying, okay. Annie will be back. Don't leave. Hey, Teresa. Hope you're having fun in Vegas.
We're doing the parade.
Yes, I'm working the first.
You're close to
I
Annie.
saw you the last time, but I drove by you and I couldn't get my window down enough to holler.
I'll be on Second and Third
She
Avenue
has your phone.
with four of the people in the parade. So I just got
I
my
did call her
assignment
the
last
other
night.
day.
I'll probably be here because.
I first heard about your shop at AQS. Wonderful. Are you going to be in
Oh, there's
Daytona
stuff to watch
in
tomorrow.
Be ready again. We're gonna be back.
Yeah, because, we don't have, originally we were supposed to be there for 9:30.
Let's see, St. George,
Yeah.
Utah. It's gotta be
According
her, right?
to, tonight I'll be on the net, so I'll double.
Just bear with
check
us for 1 second,
it.
everybody. We're getting Annie back on, so I'm calling her.
Lineup starts at Washington and the parade starts at,
Hey, we lost you.
Did you? Yeah, it's got the phone.
Barbara, we are located in Palm Coast, Florida. We're about an
Well,
hour south of
we're
Jacksonville.
killing some time and people are just chatting with us online. So do you think we should hang out for a minute? See if you get back up.
No. Quilted fabric through the phone. They quote the phone.
Not a problem.
Quilted panel.
No, it's all right. I just want to make sure. Yeah, so, okay, cool, we're here. All righty, thanks, Annie. Bye.
Oh, Linda, yeah, I'm coming.
I just got off the phone with Annie and yeah, their whole internet went out everywhere.
Of
She goes, and that
course.
never happens, so.
Of
We're
course.
the lucky winners.
You
but
tell them.
They're gonna figure it out.
Yeah, I took the afternoon.
So you guys just hang out with us for a minute.
Hey, at the doctor.
That afternoon is not wasted.
That's true.
You're in Orange Park? Oh, yeah, you're super close to us.
There you go. And you got
Yeah.
Orange Park isn't far away.
Barbara, do you know about our shop hop?
That's right, Barbara. You doing the shop hop in January from the 17th to the 24th? Thank you. We have passports at all the shops. There's 9 stores participating, Barbara. So we'd love for you to join us.
We were too much.
We're too much for Annie.
We were too much for Annie.
Murphy is a mean guy. I don't know what that one is.
Murphy's
Murphy's
Law.
Law.
Oh, right.
Oh.
Sorry, Michelle. That went right over my head. It was too clever for me. Well, Barbara, we can fix that. Feel free to give us a call, or if you're in Orange Park, I guess Cinnamons is the closest.
Cinnamons, yeah, or she can go online and buy it.
You can also go, cutupandsew.com, or you can go to Cinnamons. They're close to you. Can I get info? Yeah. Honestly, Tony, would you put our phone number in the comments real quick? Tony's going to post. You'll see the Cut Up and Sew. Just give us a call, and we can take care of you. Easy peasy. Technology is awesome when it works. Sorry, Annie. There we go. Well, it shows up 3 times.
It's because those are 3 different areas it's going.
That's right. Calico
She's
Station, not far
cross-posting.
from you.
But they're not in the shop.
They're not in the shop hop. You're right.
Tilted quilters, she said.
Tilted Quilter is
Yes.
closer. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Dawn and them got you covered. It's fun listening to Annie tell her story, though.
That's
Yeah,
I've never
yeah.
heard
Great
that.
story.
I know. Well, she is. It's like she does this for a living.
I know the room got so quiet, you could tell everybody was real paying attention.
All right. And she has my phone number, so if there's any other issues, we'll obviously have to, we'll cross that bridge when we get there, I guess.
Yeah. I think you took it.
We're just gonna hang out for a little bit longer, though,
But
make
you
sure.
switched my thing.
I'm so
I didn't know
engrossed.
you were
Yes,
saying-
Karen, I am too.
Is it down there?
It's right there.
Oh, I couldn't see it.
Barbara, Tilted Quilters is a great shop. We were just there Monday.
That's right.
Beside.
And if anybody's just jumping on, wondering, why am I watching a bunch of people walk around and just hang out? We're waiting for Annie to get back on. They lost Wi-Fi, so we're waiting for them to jump back
Oh,
on.
this is the last one.
Oh, he had this.
All that gold in.
Where did you get your fabric printed?
It was
Oh, it was done for us.
Somebody, yeah, I can't remember. Somebody made that for us.
First
We're-
year you
We're
were
trying to
open.
set up a hotspot. Awesome.
They ought to stock it.
Hmm?
They ought to, you ought to
So
stock it
for
so
those
we
of
can
you at
make it.
home, if you have a question that you would like us at some point to ask Annie, if you would, pop it in the comments for us. And if you guys come up with one, just, you got one?
Yeah, when did she start covering all the seams of everything and why?
Okay, so hold that thought. I'm just gonna write your name down and then I'll come to you and ask. You don't need,
You're not gonna write all that out?
no.
I'm getting fuel.
And that goes, if she's talking or if we're talking at any point in time during the live, if you have a question, don't be shy. Pop it in the comments. We'll come back and check. Yeah. What's the name of the show that you guys were talking about? The little session, the segment that Annie does.
I just don't care.
I just don't-
We do not care.
We do not care.
We do not
We do
care.
not
Quilt
care.
Club edition.
We
Yeah,
do not care. Cool Club. That's great.
it's funny.
Yeah.
It is.
I've caught a few of them. It is funny. Well, I love her personality. You can tell she's having fun.
Yay!
Hey, hold on. She's got to let you back in.
Well, I'm
Welcome back.
sorry about that. Thank goodness Casey came in. Casey, come say hello. I haven't talked about you
Casey.
yet, but I'm going to.
Save the day.
Miracle worker.
Hi, everybody.
Casey, who is the fixer of all things. And Jake,
Well,
who's over there, who also, I could not live with both of them. But Casey's our big
Thank you.
picture guy and my right-hand man.
Excuse us, we have a fiber internet connection. It almost never goes down, but
Hey.
what is that rule? The Murphy's Law?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Boy, I wouldn't have thought of that. So.
Thanks for
Appreciate it.
fixing it, fellas.
All right, so I was in the middle talking about getting to go to Houston with Bob and Heather, and
Yeah.
and the fact that she was going to pay me, and because I was going to work hard, and I did. I would demonstrate from before the show opened until the show was over every day, and it was super fun. And when we got done with that show, they said, that was really nice having someone here to help and do demos. Would you like to continue to do shows? So I got to the point where I was doing, I don't know, 20, or it seemed like I was on the road all the time. I went to Hawaii and all over, all the big shows, Paducah and all of them, and did shows with them for several years. And the really wonderful thing was that they also said, bring your patterns and we'll sell your patterns in the booth. So I don't think byAnnie ever would have become what byAnnie became without that step that I got from Bob and Heather, because they exposed me and my patterns to the world, you know, and I don't know that I ever would have taken that step on my own. So I really owe them both a real debt of gratitude. So I did shows with them for quite a while until it got to the point that I had so many patterns that Bob said, okay, it's time for you to have your own booth, which by that point I'd been doing shows probably for 10 years. I was comfortable doing my own booth. So we went that direction. They, when I started, Heather and I did a whole lot of quilt patterns together. Heather would come up with an idea and she'd come over and we'd sit down and play on electric quilt software, and I would design the pattern. We'd try all different options and layouts, and I'd write the pattern. She'd go home and make the quilt, pay someone amazing to quilt it. They'd hang it in the booth, and I sold lots and lots of quilt patterns. But I quickly realized that what I really wanted to do was bags and purses. I had a Vera Bradley bag that I had bought, and when it wore out, I thought, I'm not going to buy another one of these and have, you know, thousands of people have the very same purse I have. I want to make one that's just my own, and I can look at this and figure out how to do it. So I figured out how to make a purse very similar to the Vera Bradley bag that I had. And I wrote a pattern for it. We discontinued it, I think, this year, but we sold that for a lot of years. It was called Annie's Favorite Purses. And it was just a super fun bag. But the interesting thing was when I got done making that first bag, I was really disappointed in it because my Vera Bradley bag stood up like this and held its shape, and I could zip it open and it would stand there and it worked really good. Well, the bag that I made myself was floppy. And I thought this is made out of quilted fabric. So I quilted fabric, but I used the quilt batting that I had in it. And I realized it's like, what makes theirs different? And so as my bag wore out more and more, I could see that what they used in it for the stabilizer was foam. And I thought, I've never seen stuff like that. I wonder where they got it. So I went looking, and at that time, St. George had amazing resources. We still do. We still have probably I don't know, 4 or 5 wonderful quilt shops here. But at the time, I think we had 10 quilt shops. And the Ace Hardware had fabric, and Walmart had fabric. Joann's had fabric. You could go anywhere and find whatever you needed. But I could not find a foam stabilizer that would work. So I found the thinnest foam I found was about a half an inch thick. And if you tried to quilt it, it looked like the Michelin Man. You know, you had these big, stuff. And so I thought, that's not going to work. And then I found kind of a stiffer foam like they would use to make visors and things, but you couldn't sew through that. And finally, I found something called headliner foam. And it was a foam that was designed to go in the headliner of cars. And it was a nice soft foam, and it had a tricot fabric lining on one side. And I bought some of that and took it home and sewed a purse, and oh my gosh, it stood up and held its shape. And I was so excited about it. And so I started using that in my bags and purses and calling for it on my patterns. And I'd go to shows and people would say, man, what did you put in here that this feels so nice and it stands up so good? And so I would, singing the praises of headliner foam. Well, one day I'd written a pattern called Serenity, which is still available on our website. By this point, Superior had come out with a product called Texture Magic, which was a fabric that would shrink. And you would sew it to your fabric, and you could get all kinds of different effects depending on how close you stitched, what stitch you used, if you put batting in between. Wool batting really gave it nice dimension. And so this particular pattern was written to use Texture Magic. And so it had a flap that we used a particular fabric from Maywood Studios that had this beautiful organic shape on it. And we quilted along the lines. We put wool batting in between, and it was just a gorgeous bag. I had wide straps on it, and I attached them to the bag with 2-inch wooden rings. And so I called for those on the pattern. I called for the wool batting. I called for the Texture Magic. And one day my phone rang, and it was a store owner. And she said, I've got this Serenity pattern. And she said, what is Texture Magic? Because Texture Magic was fairly new. And where do I get it? And so I explained that to her. And she says, where do I get wool batting? And I explained, well, this is who carries it. But at the time, it wasn't readily available either. I had all these access to these things because I was going to shows regularly. She said, well, what about this headliner foam? Where do I get that? Well, I buy that at Joann's. But, and then she said, what about these wooden rings? I said, well, I went to the hardware store and I bought curtain rings and I just took the hardware out. And she said, people like you make me so mad. She said, I will stay in business if I have to send my customers to 5 different stores to get what they need to make your project. And it was really eye-opening to me. And I thought, you know what? I get what you're saying. And so from that moment on, I pretty much decided that if I was going to call for it on a pattern, it was either going to be something that we carried or something that they could easily get through their distributor. So about that time, I was at a show, and Terry Atkinson was across the aisle from us, and she had just come out with her little display of 14-inch zippers. And that booth was the hit of that show. And people were in and out of that booth and so blown away by being able to get zippers in all these colors and being able to have this great way to display it. And I watched her doing that, and I thought, it's time for me to get handbag zippers in more sizes and colors, and also to get soft and stable at a price that I can afford to sell it to stores. And so I went home and got really busy. The first thing I did was zippers, and that was pretty easy because I could find them. But I came up with 48, actually at that time I came up with 10 colors, 10 or 12, all colors that were neutrals. And it has since grown because people said, can you have more colors? Because everybody loved having the handbag zippers, which were wider and had the big pulls and the links they needed. And I said, well, what colors do you want? Pink, yellow. And it's like, seriously? You would put that in first? It took me a while to get to that point. And now, I rarely use a neutral colored zipper because I love the color too. So that one I got on that because I thought if I wait, somebody's going to beat me to this. And then I started looking for someone to make a product which became soft and stable. So because I had been buying big rolls every time Joann's came out with a 40% coupon, I figured I was buying it at wholesale. So I'd go buy a big roll of the headliner foam, and then I would cut it and sell it on my website in half yard and 1 yard pieces. And I had sold about 1,000 yards in the year before that I started looking. And because I was buying so much of it, they were giving me just the roll right in its packaging, just as it came in. So I knew where they bought it. And so I said, I'm looking to develop this product. And I said, I want to change it, because what I didn't like about the headliner foam is that it was a super soft foam and it was really stretchy. And so if you wanted to quilt a big piece, like at that time our laptop computer carriers pattern was popular, and you needed to quilt a 40 by 20 inch piece, you got to the end and you had a boat because it stretched as you went. There was no way you could keep it flat. And so that was one thing I wanted to fix. The other thing I wanted to fix was it only had fabric on one side of the foam. And so if you tried to stitch on the foam side, your foot wouldn't move. So I said, I want fabric on both sides, because the fabric would kind of hug your fabric and keep it from sliding. So I would always put the fabric down so my bottom piece of fabric didn't slide too much. But on the top, I had to really pin it and really keep it in check. So because I knew what kind of company this was, I got on the internet and I found companies all over the country, and I sent them what I was looking for and my specs of what I wanted. I said, I want the best quality foam you can give me. I want fabric on both sides. I want it to be this width. And that company sent me back once, but it took them like a month to answer me. Most of the other companies were really hard, but there was a company in Texas who everything I asked, they had answers to me right away. And they worked with me, and we came up with the product, and they sent me samples to try. And what I loved about it is I could quilt a whole piece, and it was perfectly flat when I was done. So I finally said, all right, this is it. This is the one I want. And Bobby, who was the guy I was working with, said, you know, you're going to have to buy 1,000 yards of this. And I kind of gulped, because that was a big investment for me. But I said, you know, I've sold 1,000 yards of the headliner foam in a year. If this lasts me a year, that's fine. And so I said, yeah, put the order in. And they said, okay, we're going to ship it on such and such date, and it's coming on a semi. And I thought, oh my gosh, I can't have this semi. So I called Bob at Superior Threads, and I said, I've got a shipment of soft and stable coming. Would you care if I had it delivered to your dock? And he said, no, that's fine. Well, they called me at 4:00 on Friday afternoon and said, Annie, your soft and stable's here. It's out on the dock. Well, by the time I got there, of course, they'd all gone home, and all I had was a little Isuzu pickup. My husband, by that point, we had either Idaho or Montana, somewhere, but he was up there for the summer. This is the middle of August. It's probably 105 degrees outside. I have a little Isuzu pickup that will hold 3 rolls at a time. And so they're 50-yard rolls. So how many rolls is that in 1,000 yards? A lot. Anyway, it took me, hours to ferry that home. And by the time I got done, my garage was full. I had to put my car out in the driveway that night. And so I texted my hairdresser, who had a 16-year-old son. And I said, Cammie, do you think Alex would be available tomorrow to come help me? I've got this soft and stable. Market's coming up. I need to get it cut and packaged. Could he come help me cut? So yeah, he could. So Alex came the next day, and we'd one roll, 50-yard roll at a time. They weigh 50 pounds. So he'd get one end, I'd get the other. I have a circular staircase that goes to my upstairs where my cutting table is. So we'd carry we'd put it out, we'd roll it out on the table, and we'd measure half yard or 1 yard, and we would spend the entire day cutting. And I'd go stack it on tables and beds. And then when Alex went home at night, I would fold and put it in bags and put it in boxes. And it did not take long at all before my entire downstairs of my house was full of boxes. Soft and stable boxes are 30 inches long, 17 inches wide, and 16 inches tall. And that only holds 18 yards of soft and stable. So I had boxes everywhere. And at this point, my husband was already getting a little bit on edge about how my business was taking over the house. And I thought, he is just going to have fits. And I remember calling him one night and saying, oh my gosh, I think I have made the biggest mistake. I said, this is so time consuming. It takes up so much room. I was used to going to a show and selling patterns and having, you know, a box of patterns this big. And now it was going to be a truckload of stuff to take to a show. And I said, it's so time consuming. It takes up so much room. I said, you're just going to die when you come home and see all this. He had watched me basically name Texture Magic, figure out how to use it, you know, write patterns for it. I wrote probably 30 patterns for it within the first couple years that he came out. And he had watched me kind of develop a product for Superior Threads, which didn't bother me at all because I was still selling my patterns. But he wanted me to have a product that was mine and that I could sell. So he was very supportive. He said, don't worry about it. I will be home in a week or so. We'll rent a storage unit. I'll build some tables. We'll find some other people to help cut. One of my best quilting buddies, who was a grandma and a stay-at-home, you know, she wanted something to do. She still cuts 1 yard and 2 yard pieces for us. So we found several young moms that wanted to do it, and that's still how we have it working. But we get the rolls in and we send it. Well, that 1,000 yards that I bought was gone in a month. And then we were ordering regularly after that. Now we bring in 55 truckloads. Jake, about every 6 weeks, sometimes more often than that. I walked to the warehouse yesterday, and all along the dock, all the way down, is boxes of soft and stable going to Checker. So it was a great idea and definitely a good thing. But I always said Texture Magic turned my hobby from a hobby to a business, and Soft and Stable took it just to the next level. So that's kind of where byAnnie got started. A few years after while I was doing shows, so in 2013, so I'd been going for about 13 years by that point. The first 5 or 10 years were hobby stuff. It really started getting business. My husband unexpectedly died of a heart attack. And Casey had gone to Spain to get his MBA and reconnected with Glow, who was from Spain, who he had met in Peru the year before. And they fell in love, came back to the U.S. He got a job working as chief of staff to the president of a university in California. And so they had just gotten married in September. Al died in November. And in about January or February, I was talking to Casey one day and I said, how are you liking your job by now? And he said, you know, I'm not really loving it. He said, I'm not doing what I got my MBA for. I would really like to go somewhere where I can grow a small business. Grow. I said, I would really love to have you guys come and I turn over all the day-to-day stuff to you, because trying to keep track of how much soft and stable is in the inventory, you know, how much do you need? How much do you need to order? It was just, it was a full-time job, plus trying to keep everything else going and write patterns. I said, I would love it if all I had to do was write patterns, film videos, and travel to teach. And I said, just think long and hard. I said, Glow can have a job. She didn't have her green card even yet. But I said, Glow can have a job. Just think long and hard. Do you want to work with your wife? And do you want to work with your mom? But if you do, I'll match your salary. I'd just as soon give the money to you as to the IRS. And thank goodness they thought about it for a while and said, yeah, we would really love to do that. Cool. So they moved to St. George in April or May of 2014. And it took about probably 2 or 3 years before I turned over everything to them. When you're used to doing it all yourself, it's kind of hard. And I would always say, oh, just let me do that. It's easier to do it myself than it is to teach them. Casey quickly taught me that. He said, Mom, if that's your attitude, we'll never grow. because you can't do everything yourself. And boy, once I started turning things over, it's like, man, I never want to do that again. So it took us a while to get to the point that all I had to do was write patterns, film videos, and travel and teach. And now I never have time to travel and teach anymore. But Casey has definitely turned this company into a business. When he came to work for me, we were still working out of my house. We had pretty much the upstairs was office, and we had a 2-car garage that we had stuff, and plus a storage unit for extra inventory. We moved a year or so later to a 2,500 square foot warehouse, which was full the day we moved in because we had stuff all over my house. Then we moved to 5,000 square feet, and I think we're probably up to, I don't know, 20,000 or more now. So he has really taken it to
That's awesome.
into a big business. Gloria has done every job under the sun. Gloria didn't speak great English when she
Good for
started.
you guys.
She
That's been
still has very much of an accent, but Gloria has her first job was doing purchasing, so she still does all the purchasing, although she's training our new warehouse manager to take over some of that. She did photography. She is the producer on our videos, so she's the one who sits over there and says, "Scoot over, you're not in the center. It really bothers her if I'm not right in the center." Teleprompter, she watches, do I have threads on my shirt? You know, is my hair messed up? She listens for the words if I say something wrong. And she also, probably the past at least 3 or 4 years, has been really instrumental in designing patterns. So most of the patterns that we've done for the past 4 years have started with Gloria's design ideas. She makes a prototype and then gives me, I always say she writes English with a Spanish accent. So, so she'll make notes as she goes. But in Spanish, they put the adjectives first and then the noun, or vice versa. How do we do it? I don't know. It's opposite of what she thinks from a left-handed version. So we always have to go really carefully over her notes so that I understand, you know, what she's doing. But hopefully we're going to get her to the point where she actually does a lot of the writing too. Her English gets better and better and better all the time. So we're moving to that. But yeah, it's been super wonderful having them, and it's just been a really fun journey. I started wanting to pay for my quilting habit, and now I never have time to quilt anymore. So
Isn't that funny how that works? I hear quilt shop.
A whole lot longer than you intended, but that's kind of the story of byAnnie.
Well, no, thank you for taking the time to do that. Good news, bad news is, I'll give you the bad news first. You freeze every once in a while in a really funny position. The good news is we can hear you great.
Well,
So,
I hope I give you a good laugh. I know you can't have any kind of ego or anything when you do videos, because where they stop your mouth and stuff, you just have to let it go.
That's exactly right. I gave up on that a lot. This is what I look and sound like. I just deal with it.
Yeah.
You know, it is what it is. Let's have fun. All right. Well, so I've got some questions here. In fact, Christie, we're going to start with you. Christie's in the hot seat here, and Christie is our byAnnie guru.
I hear.
That's right.
Yeah.
So do you remember your question, or you want my cheat sheet?
I do remember a question that I had for you, Annie. Through the whole experience of starting your business to where it is now, what was the biggest surprise you had, either on a positive side or a negative side, with the growth of your company?
Oh, biggest surprise. I would probably say how much time it takes. That you think that when you start getting employees and people helping, that you'll have all this extra time to go play. And I mean, we've been going for over 25 years now. I still work probably 80 hours a week, and it's a lot of work, and that doesn't change. But I think it's like they always say, if you're doing something you love, you never work a day in your life, and that's kind of it. I mean, obviously, if I didn't want to do this, I'm the boss. There's no one, cracking a whip and saying you have to work that many hours. And I'm the one who comes. One of the biggest things with Casey and Glow coming is that they've really kept me more on track. I used to be notorious for somebody writing with a pattern suggestion and thinking, that's a great idea. And, going off, we call it the squirrel syndrome, that squirrel, and I'd be off on another whole tangent. So we've really developed a lot more systems and teams where we have a pattern development team where we get together and we look at what the ideas are and then make a decision between all of us. Yes, this is the direction we're going to head, and stick on that until those are done. You can't bring me any other ideas. So I'd say the work has been a bit of a surprise.
Well, you can tell you enjoy it because you're just your love for it's infectious.
Yeah,
it's great.
That's exactly right.
I enjoy watching all your videos and everything because it's inspiring too.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I really do love everything I do. It's super fun.
Yeah,
Good.
you're right, Christie. It's obvious. It's obvious. Well, I always say it a little less politely, maybe, but if you don't love what you do, you're going to suck at it.
Yeah,
and it's obvious that you love what you do.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Yep.
Awesome. All right. So we have a question from Nancy, who's not here. I don't think was she on? Okay, Nancy, I'll read your question. How has bag making evolved over the years? And in what ways has it done so?
When I started writing bag patterns, there were not very many bag patterns out there. And one person I know that was writing patterns was Amy Butler. And one of the gals who worked for me, her mother manages one of the really nice quilt stores in our town. And Kate had worked there. And Kate was a huge Amy Butler fan. Kate taught me so much about choosing fabrics. I was stuck in the dark ages with neutrals and, solid fabrics or plain fabrics. And she exposed me to Amy Butler and pink zippers and all of that stuff. And so I really owe her a lot too for all that she taught me. And she actually now has her own pattern business, Knot and Thread. Some of you may have made some of her patterns. So she worked for me for several years. And where am I going with this story? What was the question?
Yeah, just how has bag making evolved over the years?
Okay, so Kate made some of Amy Butler's patterns, and one of them was her weekender tote. And Kate said, this is the biggest pain to make this because you have to put layer after layer after layer of interfacing in order to get this bag to stand up. And because nothing existed other than putting interfacing in. People were using things like Peltex, which if you ever tried to turn your bag inside out, looked all wrinkly and stuff. People were using plastic needlepoint canvas to put it in to get it to stand up, or just living with the fact that their bag was going to be sloppy, or like Amy Butler did, doing several layers of interfacing on each piece and then trying to sew it together. So when Soft and Stable came out, the first show that I took it to, Joan Hawley at Lazy Girls Design, I wanted for sure to be able to show it to her because I thought it would be so ideal in her projects. And Bob and Heather were awesome. I took what I thought was a pretty generous amount of what I was going to sell at the show. And I took one set of stuff for market, and I took another bunch for festival, which is the retail show that follows the wholesale show. And within the first day of the show, we had gone through almost everything that I took for market, and we were out by the second day. And I asked Bob, what do I do? And he said, you're better off getting this in the hands of the stores than in customers' hands. Bring in what you brought for festival. Save a little bit so you have enough to show, but bring it in. And we sold through most of the festival inventory before market was over as well. And so that's why that 1,000 yards was gone so quickly. But they gave me the last day of the show off. And I walked the entire show with my purse made with Soft and Stable, my purse made with batting. I could show the people the difference that it made. And I had little samples of it to hand out. And people said, this will revolutionize bag making. And I really think it did, because before that, no one did anything, but really there weren't very many bags out there, but no one had done anything with a foam stabilizer. So that, I think, is the first thing that changed a whole lot. Again, there were very few bag makers, and now there are, gajillions of them, and everybody has a different style. There are some who want to quilt their fabrics. There's some who don't want to quilt their fabrics. Handbag zippers really weren't well known at the time. People were using dress zippers, and I remember when I started writing patterns, I had never worked really with zippers. I had gone to home ec class in high school and learned to put a zipper in by sewing a 5/8 inch seam, pressing it open, putting my zipper on, sewing from the inside or from the outside, hoping I got it straight, hoping I got it in there. And I hated zippers. Our first project was to make a skirt with a zipper in it. And oh, by the way, you need to use a plaid or a striped fabric. So they didn't really set us up for success. So that was my memory of zippers. So when I started writing purse patterns, it's like, the first ones I didn't even have zippers in them. But then I started doing zippers, and I started studying ready-made bags to see how they were done. And I figured out the way we do zippers now, where you put your pieces together, you sew the zipper, you turn it over and let it cover the raw edges. And that kind of revolutionized purse making, because people weren't doing that method for putting in zippers. Handbag zippers. So when I would make a project, I would go to the store and I would look for the length of zipper I needed, because I didn't know you could cut a zipper. I thought everything I had done, you always kept the stops on each end, and you kept that within your seam allowance. So I would design my pattern basically for the most common sizes of zippers that were available. And then I would go to the store and I would see if I could find that size of zipper. And once I did, I would then go buy my fabric to match the zipper, because there was no way that I could do it the other way around. Because if I came in with a fabric like this, I probably couldn't find a zipper to match it. Same thing with handles. So on the first bags that I did, I made fabric handles. And I started noticing these are really limp. They don't have the structure that, my other bag has. What's the secret? And so then I realized, strapping. And so then I started looking for strapping, thinking, well, I'll just do it plain. Well, if I wanted to do gray or black or brown or hunter green or navy, I was in luck. But if I wanted, fun stripes like this, there was no way I could do it. So then I figured out, let's make a fabric tube and pull the strapping into it, so we have the strength of the stability, but the look of the fabric. And now you can buy strapping in amazing varieties of colors. Tula's got her new strapping with the stripes on it, and all that fun stuff. So that the materials that are available, the options that are out there for patterns, it's just exploded. So those are the main changes I've seen. Just the products and the availability of everything. And videos. I mean, videos changed the world. When I taught my first Christie class, our business doubled overnight. And, that continued with every class I taught. And now that we do videos, people are such visual learners and appreciate so much being able to see it. And that has made a tremendous difference. I think people would look at my patterns and say, I'd love to make that, but they'd look at the words and they'd say, there's no way I can. Once we had the ability to show them what was going on, it was like, okay, that's not so hard. I can do that. So that made a huge difference too.
Yeah, this technology and being able to watch people from across the globe is huge, and that changed the entire industry. As much as we love in-person events, like we have a bag lady club, and it's dedicated just to bag making, and we have a Tula club. So circle back around. If you can introduce us to Tula, that would be awesome. You could show her my hat. But so in-person education is amazing. But yeah, the being able to do virtual, even just watching videos, not necessarily classes, has changed everything. So you're right.
Yeah.
Let's see. What's a good question? Well, this is almost a kind of a perfect segue. where do you see the industry going? And let's say 5 to 10 years, or I'm assuming that you're not a part of those negative Nancys, no offense, Nancy, who are saying that this industry's dying, sewing is a dying art. Where do you foresee this industry in 5, 10 years?
I see this industry just continuing to grow. I see so many young people that are getting excited about making projects, quilts, bags, purses. I think bags and purses are a really good way for people to get started because they don't require a huge investment of time or money. And, if they've got somebody to teach them, a few basic tips about how to do it, they're great for, things that they need, things that they can give for gifts. They're almost like instant gratification. You get, you learn a new skill, and once you get started on something, you're just off on a lifetime of adventure. So I am definitely not a negative Nancy. I see so many young people coming into this and getting super excited about it, and I just see it growing exponentially. I think that local quilt shops are going to continue to be super strong because it's super hard to buy fabric through a picture on a screen. People like to touch it. They like to look at it. They want to be able to get all the stuff they need to hold that zipper and that mesh and that fold over elastic up next to it to see if it matches. And I don't know. I see that, all these big companies like Joann's and all those going out, and I think it's just more opportunities for the local quilt shops and the community that is developed there. I never developed a community with anybody shopping at Joann's, but I can walk into any quilt store and be perfectly comfortable walking up and saying, "What are you buying that for? What are you going to make?" And invariably, I end up buying the same thing because I love what they've done. So I have good feelings about where it's headed.
I agree. I think we all agree with you, and that's the right answer. I'm so excited for the future of this industry. People ask it all the time, though, so I appreciate you, answering that so honestly. Actually, perfect. There was one question. It was a pretty simple question, but you had mentioned bags being good for beginner sewers. What's the best byAnnie pattern for a beginner?
I definitely recommend our byAnnie Basics series. So I actually pulled those because the one I'm doing tomorrow, she wanted me to talk about those.
Oh, you're frozen. Are you about to show us? Hold on. We can hear you still. It is a good picture this time. You're smiling. Oh, there you're back. All right. We're good.
Okay. So we, and I really credit Casey with this. Casey, you had wondered about the local quilt shop. That was Casey's idea because I was at that point in time traveling and teaching. And I was on the road probably half of the year. How I ever got patterns done, I have no idea. But I was traveling all over the place teaching, which I loved. I absolutely loved doing it. But I'd have a class with 10, 30 to 40 at the most people in it. And, it'd take me a week to get ready and a week to put things away when I was done and all this stuff. And he just said, "You can't keep doing this. You've got to figure out we've got to figure out a different way because you can't reach that many people." So that's when the Craftsy class came out, and I had 5,000 people in that class, and I was able to teach 5,000 people without even leaving home. I did it once, and that's been 15 years now, and people still take that class and learn about byAnnie through that. So he said we need to come up with some patterns that you can teach the basics with, and we'll do step-by-step videos all the way through. At that time, we just didn't have time to do full step-by-step videos for every project. So we said if we can teach the basics and then focus on just what's unique in a pattern, we'll do that. For the past year and a half, we kind of finally gave in and said, okay, we'll do full step-by-step. So now all the patterns we've done for at least a year, maybe a little longer, have had beginning to end videos for them. But I always recommend starting with the basics. So we have 4 byAnnie Basics patterns. We have a few other free patterns, but this is kind of the core. And this is the order that I recommend that you work on them in. So the first one, these are free patterns to download at our website. The videos are free that go with them. We also make these available to stores as printed patterns. So if you want to teach a class, it's a really inexpensive way to put together a kit and get people in to do a class. So the first one is Petty 4 Baskets. And the reason we wrote this pattern is to teach people about soft and stable. So you learn that if you want it to have a nice crisp fold on the side, you stitch a line there. You learn that if you want the seam at the bottom to be mashed down and not be too bulky, you sew extra lines in the seam allowance. You learn about making a project without quilting, and you have a cute little basket that stands up and holds its shape. So if you had one of these made out of batting, which I often do when I'm teaching this, they can really see the difference that soft and stable adds to their project. So you only need 2 10-inch squares of fabric and soft and stable to make this, and it's a really quick project. Then we move on to one called Peacekeeper, and you learn all kinds of stuff in this one. So in this one, you learn to quilt your fabric with soft and stable. So you learn about making a sandwich, quilting through the layers. You learn to attach a zipper to a mesh pocket, to add a border to that has a lining on it so you don't have any raw edges or wrong sides showing. You learn to make a really simple interfaced handle. You learn to make your own bias binding. You learn to round corners, and you learn to attach binding on a flat project. Then we designed Call Me, which is just a little cell phone holder. I designed this for people doing quilt shows so they could put their phone in the back. They could put their ID in here that they have to have, and they can put their credit card here. When I worked at Superior in the booth, I spent a lot of time at the registers too, and it was always so annoying when you'd have a long line of people who've been waiting in line, for a half an hour, and they get to the register and they're digging around in their huge bag trying to find their credit card. So it's like, if they can have their credit card right here, that'll solve that problem. So that was kind of the piece of this. But we also, in this one, you continue to build on the skills that you learned, quilting, making your own bias binding, rounding corners, but you also learn to work with vinyl, you learn to put a zipper in a quilted pocket, and you learn to work with fold over elastic and mesh. Again, just a super simple little project. And then the last one in the series is called Easy Does It. I hear a lot of people who tell people, oh, you're just starting, start with Easy Does It. No, start with those, make those first. The name on this one, I will admit, is a little bit of a misnomer. It's not particularly easy, but you'll learn a lot of great skills in this. So in this one, you again quilt. The main reason we wrote this bag was to teach people how to do the seam that connects the zipper strips to the side strip. So this bag has a front and a back, and then you put your zipper between 2 strips of fabric, and you join them to a piece on the side, and that forms the top, the sides, and the bottom of the bag. When we join this, normally when we're doing a binding, we just sew it on and come around the side. And if you do your binding like that on this seam, you're going to have a great big bump right here where your seams comes together. And we want not to have that bump, because you don't want to have a big lump in the side of your bag, and it gets really bulky to sew through. So what we do on here is we sew our binding at 1/8, 1/4, and 3/8 of an inch, and then we fold it over flat onto here so that it lays flat. It makes a huge difference, and we have lots of patterns that use that technique, but trying to explain it to people was not always easy. Once they've done it on their own, it's like, oh yeah, I get it. That makes perfect sense. So the main reason we wrote this pattern was to teach how to bind a zipper side strip with a flat binding. Also, when you make this, you learn to bind a dimensional, or assemble and bind a dimensional project, and you learn about the importance of marking centers on your front and back, lining things up, so that when you're done, your handles are even on each side. So you learn a whole lot of really important skills as you make this. The great thing is, once you've made all of these, you know almost every skill you need to make just about any byAnnie bag. So if you look at this Ultimate Travel Bag, so Easy Does It has a front, a back, and a zipper side strip. Ultimate Travel Bag has a front, a back, and a zipper side strip. It's got a few handles added, it's got a few pockets added, but everything that you've learned there is going to translate here. You've got a zippered pocket on the inside, which is just like you did on Peacekeeper. You've got some fold over elastic on something, which is just like you did on Call Me. And so you learn all of those skills in a quick and simple project. So that is where I say start. Once you've made those 4, really the byAnnie world's your oyster. I had, when I taught this was one of my Craftsy classes. I had people in this class who had never even sewn before, much less ever made a bag. And they successfully made this bag as their very first project. So it's, to me, this bag is almost simpler than a smaller project because you've got room to work. So, yeah, I don't really put, there's a few like divide and conquer, which is probably, I think, our most complicated just because you sew a binding down differently. But if you go to byAnnie.com, you can sort patterns, and there's a skill level, I think, in there. So you can, we don't say easy to hard. We say like beginner to most involved. So we rated all of the patterns based on how many pieces, how big, how many zippers, how long does it take to do, how many decisions do you have to make, and kind of categorized them that way. So that's a good way to do it. We also have a project of the month booklet where we put some levels on classes from easy to most involved. And that's helpful if you need some help on picking something that maybe is a little quicker or easier to make.
That's awesome. Yeah, so I think we did early on, didn't we? We called it the byAnnie Crash Course.
Yeah.
And I think we did. We used all 4 of those. So good. Yeah, we did also have some people that did the ultimate travel bag for their first project.
Yeah.
They learned real quick that they should have taken the crash course.
Well, and I tell stores, I say, if you're teaching ultimate travel bag, someone is going to come to class with their pockets and their handles made. Someone else is going to come to class with nothing even cut out. And so at no point during the class is everyone at the same spot. So when I teach this, I taught it and we called it byAnnie Boot Camp. And I made everybody wait until everybody had done the step that we were on because they're such short little easy projects. We did it as a 2-day class and every single person went home from that class with their projects finished. And even people who had made lots of byAnnie bags said, I learned so much in that because they were listening. They had time when I talked about all the tips for how you work with vinyl. They actually sat and listened to me as I talked because they weren't trying to get their bag finished. So I highly recommend that stores keep that on your schedule every month, every quarter at least, so that everybody new come in, that's their prerequisite. Start here.
I love it. Well, thank you. That was super helpful. I mean, it's amazing though. You could take the same class from a different educator and you're going to learn something entirely different. We say it all the time. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Diane, did you have a question?
Yes.
Yeah.
When and how did you decide to cover all the seams inside?
I decided that right away. I never liked an unfinished seam. And I think Vera Bradley must have, because Vera Bradley was very much an inspiration to me. I loved everything they had. And I think all of theirs had bindings on them. And so I just went with that. And I will say, bindings never scared me. I think because I thought it had to be there. I see so many people who complain about binding, not as much as I used to. I think people have finally learned it's doable. But to me, binding adds so much structure to your bag. And when I look inside something, I want it to look as nice on the inside. And I don't want all those threads fraying out there. So yeah, I think I've done that since the very beginning. It took me a little while to figure out how to make the bias binding with the square of fabric. And that came about because, trying to figure out how much fabric they need and how to tell them to cut it. Again, my mom was a child of the Depression. If you look at the very original byAnnie patterns, it's when I was using, nondescript fabrics, definitely nothing with motifs and directionality on it. I was focused almost completely on making best use of the fabric. And I learned really quickly that cutting a square of binding was the most efficient fabric-wise way to make it. And also just an easy way to make sure that people were always going to have enough of what they needed. So that kind of is an aside. But yeah, bindings have been part of it all along. Annie's favorite purses had bindings on all the seams on the inside.
Fantastic. Which, do you have a favorite?
You know, when people ask me, I would have to say my favorite is probably Catch-All Caddy. I have a Catch-All Caddy on every work its little sister. Here's its little sister in control. So we have a Catch-All Caddy on every work table. I have one at my desk. I have one in my bathroom. It's my go-to gift for a shower gift. It's just so super useful. In Control, we made one of these for each sewing machine, and so it has a smaller footprint, so we have one sitting next to each sewing machine. Alyssa Zaccardi, when she was here to film videos, we went upstairs and were working on stuff, and she was amazed. She said, "You really do have those by every machine." It's like, yeah, you think I say that and it's not true? yeah. So those are my two favorites. I just made a new one of these this weekend. Lori Holt had sent me her new line that's coming out, I think this month, Farmer's Daughter. And she said, I like to do them scrappy. So I challenged myself to use some of her blocks and to do it scrappy. All I had from them was fat quarters. So I made one, and I had to adapt her patterns because they were too big to fit on the pockets. So I made FPP patterns for them. So I have all these little balls of yarn going across the front. And then on the back, I have flowers. And I managed to make the whole thing with just fat quarters. So I had to piece a couple pieces. I had to stick in a separate one kind of on the bottoms of the tabs because I didn't have enough of all the fabrics, but it was super fun to do. I still love making this.
That's awesome.
I think we've made 70 of these now. I think this actually 74 because we number all of our models because we send them out for trunk shows, so they all have labels on them, and we keep track of them really carefully.
Sure.
But yeah, 74 I think was the number on that one.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Has anybody else? I don't want to miss anybody.
Check Facebook or check the.
And we can check. Would you check online? Make sure.
I wanted to know how she hooked up with Tula. She uses so much of Tula fabric.
So I don't know if you heard. Did you hear the question, Annie?
I did. So interestingly, I didn't actually get to know Tula until 2019 when she and I were both teaching in Norway at a quilt camp. And so the teachers all spent a lot of time together. But the way I met Tula, so in my first Craftsy class, I was at a show and one of the people from Craftsy came through, and I'd been hearing, people saying, Craftsy, this is a really good thing. And Sue Hausman, I think is who it was, had in some group that I was, had said, Craftsy was the best business decision I ever made. And so I kept thinking, I need to contact them and see what this is all about. And my big thing was, I have no idea what to offer them, what else to say I'd like to teach. And so their acquisitions editor came to a show I was at and introduced herself. And she said, would you be interested in teaching a class? She said, our customers tell us that they want smaller projects and they want organizational items. And I said, I've been meaning to contact you. I just didn't know, what to offer. I said, will you look around my booth and see if there's anything that, you think would be good? Well, she decided, this is the 2.0 version, but she decided that A Place for Everything would be a great class and Travel Essentials. And this was supposed to be a 6-hour class. Or less, and we were going to do both of these projects, which we did. Being a whole lot longer class, I think, than any class they'd ever taught. But the fabric, and they let me pick fabric, and the fabric I picked was Tula's fabric, and maybe that was a later class. one of my customers had made a place for everything bag and sent it to Tula, and Tula fell in love with it. Well, we were in Chicago at a show, and I'd gone to the bathroom and I was headed back in, and I saw Tula standing by the Coke machine. And Tula, you don't miss her. She is a force of nature, and no one else looks like her.
Yeah.
And so I walked up very tentatively, and I said hello, and I said, I'm doing this craftsy class and I'm going to be using your fabric, and I just thought you'd like to know. And she said, what's your name? And I said, Annie. And she stopped and she backed up and she said, are you a place for everything, Annie? And so that's kind of how I first met Tula. And I always laugh because I'd always go show her what I'd made when we went to shows, and she's so much taller than me, but she was just great. And so then when we went to Norway in 2019, the teachers all ate dinner together, and it was a super fun thing. It was I think 5 days long. It was Tula and Anna Maria Horner and the So Kind of Wonderful sisters and Tilda, Jan Kingwell. I mean, just an amazing lineup of teachers. And every night there were 600 people there, most from Europe. I don't think there were any Americans there that I know of. They had Annie Downs from Australia. It was just lots of people. And we had classes all day. And then every night, Catherine would have a lecture type thing, but she had a theme, and each one of the teachers would talk. So one night it was, where do you get your inspiration? One night it was, how do you have your studio set up? But it was really a wonderful way to get to know all of those people. And I've never laughed so hard in all my life, because those ladies are super fun and super great. Jan Kingwell in particular. Oh my gosh, she's so much fun. So yeah, other than that, Tula contacted me one year at a show, and she was just coming out with her hardware. And she said, I've got all these scissors and things coming out, and I'd like to have a bag to put them in. Would you be willing to design a pattern? Well, no one's going to say no to Tula. And I said, sure. And she said, I'll send you home with everything, and you can do whatever you want. I designed about 4 different patterns in the course of trying to decide what to do. I thought about doing In Control, because I had this one already, but I realized you're not going to be able to protect the handles of scissors. You don't want them falling out. So I designed this. It went off for nothing else. Divide and Conquer was the other one that I designed in the process of that, but I thought that's going to be too hard to use. So I finally came out with Running with Scissors and Take a Stand. And Tula was very, very complimentary when I showed them to her, and just perfect. So yeah, that was, and Tula was the one who named it. I said, I'm trying to think of a name, and she said, how about Running with Scissors? So there it was. But that was super fun.
That's great. You guys make a good team.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm really fortunate because Free Spirit, I guess Tula has to approve you as someone she's happy. So, but once I got on the list as a Tula maker, Free Spirit sends me so much fabric, and it's at the point now that they send me fabric direct from the mill. It doesn't have to go to them, and then they send it. So there have been many times. In fact, this year I had Floral Reef before Tula had it. But I probably shouldn't say that out loud. I don't know if Tula knows. But there have been times when Free Spirit has contacted me and said, do you have some of this that you can send us, because we've got somebody who needs it for something? And yeah, so it's been great. I finally had to tell them last year, though, please don't send me so much, because if I get it, I feel obligated to use it, and I can't keep up. So slow down a little.
That's awesome. Free Spirit fabrics, not too bad. Hey, look, we could be a Tula maker.
Yeah. Sure.
Were there any other questions from anybody? I just want to make sure.
No.
Yeah, how many unfinished projects do you have currently on the go?
When I was a quilter, I had way more unfinished projects. When I was doing my scrapbooking, I have 2 albums full of all my projects that I'd made. And one year I decided I'm going to list all my projects that I've made and the ones I'm working on. I had over 100 projects I'd started or bought stuff for that weren't
Oh.
finished. And I'm guessing most of those have never been finished. But when I started making purses and bags, part of the reason is, I have to have them for something. The only unfinished project I think that's sitting in my sewing room is an on the go that I started, and in February when I did the live with Annie, I did a flying geese border. And one of the samples I made, I used some fabric from Juicy because Juicy Juice was coming to be my guest in May, I think. And so I wanted to have this bag done. I didn't get it done, but it's still saying I'm going to send it home with my model maker next week when she comes into town so she can finish it, because it's not going to get there. But yeah, I really don't have a lot of unfinished projects in terms of bags and stuff anymore. So if you had asked me last week, I would have had about 5, but I worked really hard last week. It was Thanksgiving weekend, and I got a lot of stuff finished.
Nice. Anybody else? Was there anybody online? Did you see anything? I just want to make sure.
They were just commenting about.
Annie, how many patterns do you make or samples do you make compared to your makers that help you out?
When I'm designing a pattern, so this is kind of interesting. When we come up with a new pattern, the first prototype that we make is always just soft and stable, naked webbing, no bindings, just here's how you figure it out. So in fact, I had pulled that the other day. So Leader of the Pack, which was a new pattern, we didn't even add straps on here, but this was our prototype for Leader of the Pack. Just how do we want the size, where do we want the pockets? We didn't even put pockets in this one yet, but we start there, and until we've solidified, yes, that's the design that we want, we work strictly with soft and stable. Then once we figured it out, I will usually make one to figure out, is this all going to work? Because making something with soft and stable is not at all like working with a quilted fabric. By the time you get all those layers in there and add the bindings, you got to make sure you can go through all those layers. So then I'll make one, and then I'll write a pattern, and then I'll usually make another one. And then once I've got that kind of worked out, as I make that second one, I take pictures of all the steps. Then I'll send it to my graphic artist. Actually, then usually Glow will make one, because she a lot of times has different ideas about, how things should be organized or put in. Once she's done, then we send the pictures and the pattern to our graphic artist, and she illustrates it. And then once it's illustrated, I usually send it to other in-house testers, Randy and Marianne and Leona, and they will make one. And we work out as many kinks as we can. Sometimes you have to make another one to make sure that works. When we did Leader of the Pack, I think we ended up with probably 5 prototypes by the time we got it exactly the way we wanted it. So that's probably the most. I would say 3 to 4, though, is not at all uncommon. So then we send it to outside testers and do their input. And there are times when the outside testers will come up with something. For instance, Leader of the Pack, when we designed it, the first one we did, so this is the one that Liam carries to school every day. The first thing that we did, we wanted a great big backpack for school, and we made the front and the back the same size and this front pocket the same size. And when we got it done, Glow just did not like the way the top of this looked. She thought that the top lifted up funny, and she wanted the top to be shorter. So we had to figure out how to make the front shorter than the back and still fit the side strip. She had a backpack that did that, and we realized they had put darts in it. So then we designed this one, and we thought we don't want that dart to go all the way up to where the zipper is. So we made this one, and we were happy with it. We liked the way it was shorter in the front. It came down, and we thought that was fine. So we wrote the pattern. We made a couple prototypes. We sent it to outside testers, and one of the outside testers had the honesty to say, I don't like the way those look. She said, it reminds me of coat hanger shoulders. You know how they kind of lift up when you've got a shirt hanging on a coat hanger? So we went back to the drawing board and figured out how to make this dart not look like coat hanger shoulders. So then we went back, and so then everything that we'd made couldn't be models. So all of us have a backpack. Casey always says, yeah, you'll see us carrying a lot of backpacks, but there's no pattern for them because they're the rough drafts. But so yeah, we changed we changed everything. So a lot of times we will, after testing's done, we'll go through maybe another prototype or two that either Glow or I usually sews. And from that point, then I turn it over to Marianne, and she starts making models. And we probably make anywhere from 10 to 20 models of each pattern before we ever start printing the pattern, because Marianne and Leona, who are my two model makers, are super, super detailed. And sometimes it drives me nuts. It's like, here's of pattern drafts for leader of the pack. I think we went through to version like 45 before we finalized that pattern. But the really beautiful part of that is very, very seldom do we have mistakes. They just don't, although someone wrote me yesterday, and what did they have? I think it was Take a Stand. I just posted a correction yesterday. That pattern has been out for 8 years, and someone noticed that the lines that you mark for attaching the pocket and the handles, you mark one at 4.5 or 4 inches, and the other one said to mark it at a 1/2 inch. Well, it was a 1/2 inch away from that, but it was supposed to be 4 inches. The picture showed it right, but the words said it wrong, and none of us caught that, and no one has ever mentioned it.
8 years.
Yeah. Amazing to me. So yeah, we do make mistakes, but they're few and far between now. So that makes me feel good.
Nice.
That's awesome. And you've been so generous with your time. I think we have 2 more questions. One, I saw online, someone was asking if you're going to have any more of the Craftsy classes.
I don't think so. Craftsy is not what it was. So when I did it, it was Craftsy, and then they sold to NBC Universal, which totally changed. And then when NBC Universal shut it down and someone else took it over, it's not the same company that it used to be, and I don't see that ever happening again. But we're just doing our own videos and patterns with videos to go with them in-house.
Which is awesome. And Diane,
Yes. Are you going to continue to publish a seasonal magazine with all your ideas for that year?
Our catalogs, yes. Yeah, we usually do one in the fall. Who knows what's going to happen now that Quilt Market's not happening anymore. For years, I have set my schedule of I have to have 4 to 6 new patterns for spring market. I have to have 4 to 6 new patterns for fall market. Without a fall market deadline, I'm going to really have to, figure out how to force myself to, because I work really well with deadlines. So that's going to be interesting. But yeah, we've always done one usually in the fall, and then maybe just a little short, smaller one in the spring. Now we'll probably do a bigger one in the spring. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how that all shakes out.
I have a whole section of hers.
cool.
But yes, and all of the old ones of those catalogs you can view on our website. Just, I think down at the bottom, there's a link that says catalogs, and you can see the PDF versions of them. Those are super fun to do.
Awesome. Tony had a question?
I do have a question. So you have Alyssa's jacket pattern. Do you see doing more garment patterns as well as in your catalog as you're going forward?
I will not do garment patterns because that is not. But Alyssa, definitely, we're already making plans for what we're going to do for spring. She is so full of energy. Vim and vinegar, I say. She's got so many ideas, and so yes, we will definitely continue to do that. I didn't wear my jacket today because I feel like I look like I'm headed out, but I did bring one of my coats that I made using her new pattern.
Oh, yeah.
So this is the Bella quilt coat. I made this one with some of Kate's new line, but just super fun. It was the first garment I had made Oh my gosh, in years and years and years. I used to sew all my own clothes, but I kind of got out of it. I would get so annoyed when I would see a cute drawing on in a pattern cover, and I'd make it and it didn't look anything like that on me, and it didn't fit. But I really appreciated Alyssa's pattern with the measurements and how she explains it all. And I made four jackets for myself before market this year. So they were super fun. So yes, we will definitely do those. And in case you aren't aware of it, Alyssa just started a Facebook group, a private Facebook group for all of her patterns. So it'll be the Bella quilt coat, the accent sleeves that go with that, the expansion pack for the Arcs and Beauties, and then she also did an expansion pack to go with 3 of our patterns. So this is leader of the pack. She did FPP patterns that you can put on the padded straps, and she did FPP patterns for the front pocket on leader of the pack, on courtside, and also on out and about. So she's planning to do more of those as well. So yeah, watch for spring. We'll have lots of fun new stuff to show.
Oh,
But
awesome.
Alyssa that's where I was headed. She has a new Facebook group. If you just go on Facebook and search for Quilting Alyssa Patterns, she just started it last week and she already had 700 people signed up, but she does a great job. If you want to make a coat and you're concerned about adjusting any of the sizes, she's got some great PDFs that she added there with good information for that. So yeah, be sure and check those out.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, this has been incredible. Again, I can't believe you let us chat with you for so long. So I really, really appreciate the time, and you've managed to stay relevant for so long. I'm excited to see kind of what's next, not only for you, but this industry. And I hope that we just continue to be a part of that. And I don't know.
Yeah. Now I just have to figure out how to live till I'm 120. Because
That's what I said.
Cloning is coming soon. Pills, we're all good.
Well, my grandson, who's 10, likes to sew, and he's already starting to design patterns. I have on my wall, my whiteboard in my office, he designed So Simple Wallet 2, where it opens up and has a flap, and then you fold it over in a flap that comes down. So, I mean, he did that a couple years ago. He's in the works to take over from me.
That's awesome.
Great.
That is awesome. Well, again, thank you so much. We're going to keep being Team byAnnie.
Yep.
And please keep doing what you're doing. And we'll be right here hanging out with you.
It's a pleasure for me. I thoroughly enjoyed this. So thank you for coming today, and thank you for all your questions, and thank you for supporting wonderful shops like Cut Up and Sew. We appreciate you so much. We wouldn't be here without quilt shops. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Annie.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
She's awesome.